Good afternoon and welcome to everyone to this webinar. The webinar is in the context of the commission set up by the Archbishop, Bishop Thabo Makgoba, to look at the issue of youth unemployment. We're going to request the Right Reverend Bishop Dr. Vicentia Kabe to open as the chair of that commission to open for us today in this webinar, which we hope to use to garner discussion and support as well as recommendations from the broader youth movement across Southern Africa. Over to you, Right Reverend Dr. Vicentia, to open for us.
Thank you so much, Prof. Tabane. I'd like to start with an opening prayer as we get into this. Let us pray. Lord God, in your kingdom, the harvest is abundant, but the workers are few. However, in our countries, the workers are abundant, yet there is no harvest to be found. There are many out of work, especially our young people, and it's driving many to despair. I ask that you let the earth bring forth an opportunity for people to get back to work and create employment. Help economies roar and jobs return, so that all people everywhere may find honest work and fair wage for their labor. Creator God, your people are suffering. Hear our cry. Holy Spirit, we ask that your spirit of wisdom, understanding, counsel, and power rest on each entrepreneur, investor, and employee. We ask all this and believe in this prayer and you in giving us all that you have promised us, life in abundance. We ask this in Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all for making time to be part of this webinar, something that is very important and close to many of our hearts. The matter of unemployment and entrepreneurship has been a critical matter that has been spoken about in church meetings and in provincial synods. And provincial synod is a very strategic place to talk about this because this is a supreme legislative authority within the Anglican Church. Archbishop Thabo Makgoba, the Metropolitan of the Anglican Church of Southern Africa, in his 2019 Provincial Synod charge, he addressed the issue of unemployment and its adverse impact on the lives of many, especially the young people. At the 2019 and 2021 Provincial Synods, there were motions, which are proposals, talking about this. And the proposal were requesting the Anglican Church of Southern Africa to participate in encouraging and supporting entrepreneurs and finding other stakeholders, like-minded stakeholders, to collaborate and reduce the rapidly escalating unemployment rate. And it was in May of 2022 when Archbishop Thabo Makgoba set up a commission whose duty is to look at ways the Anglican Church of Southern Africa can participate in creating employment and addressing this issue. And I was asked to be the convener of this commission. We are missing in this lineup of our commissions today, one of our commissioners, Ms. Kim William. The mission of the church, amongst many other things, is to be an agent of change, an advocate for the poor, the marginalized, and the deliberately excluded. So as we prepare God's people for the world to come, it is my belief that we are tasked to ensure that they live the abundant life promised to all of us by Jesus Christ in this part of the world. We need to be ready in this world to enjoy what God has given us, to live the life in its fullness. And again, I believe that the church has the capacity to nurture entrepreneurs and create employment. Yes, we will offer prayers, which is a good thing and something that I really encouraged. But we cannot end there just praying for people. We need to act. We need to act on those prayers. Because in our pews, we have then the unemployed and the employers. We have in our pews the entrepreneurs and those with capital to fund and invest. We have in our pews the job seekers and those who are recruiting and are owning recruitment agencies and are working in HRs who can help to employ and help those who seek employment. And I believe that in our pews, we have those who have answers to the problems that we are facing. So we as the church, we have it in us to create employment and to transform lives of many and many households, especially the lives of our young people. So I am excited that part of, and those who are commissioners in this commission are leaders of our young people's movement in the Anglican Church of Southern Africa. And I will hand over to Professor Thabani to introduce all of us.
Thank you, Bishop, for that opening and laying the basis for our discussion. Without any waste of time, I'm going to ask that we get on with the program. So what we're going to do is we're going to create, or rather get a presentation from Professor Tshidi Mohapelwa, who is going to lay the basis and just give us a broad background. After that, we'll have respondents from the presidents of the youth of the Anglican community of Southern Africa, as well as the Anglican Students Federation, who will be respondents. And then from there, we'll take comments from the floor. Anyone who wants to ask a question can post the questions into the chat box. We'll try to take as many of those questions as possible, and then we'll then go back to the panelists to round off that discussion. So the first up will be a presentation by Professor Tshidi Mohapelwa, who's also part of the commission. Professor Tshidi, over to you.
Thank you, Professor Thabani. Can I get permission to share my screen? I'm looking for a screen right. In the meantime, as I'm being granted the permission, I would like to share the podium at this stage. I will be giving just information and background on things to consider, especially for panelists to think about, and also those that are here to do I have screen sharing right?
Beverly, please allow the sharing.
Okay. So I'll just be giving statistics, information, and background and things that we could consider that would actually facilitate the discussion that we have in our, I still need screen sharing. That will create a platform for us to lay down the discussion and the debate, and in that space, I hope everyone would actually gain some access to the information. I still would like to get a screen sharing so I could share my presentation.
I'm not sure why it's not happening. Are you not able to share?
It still says host. Let me see. Okay, got it.
Beverly,
thank you.
Please, can you assist?
No, I got it now. Thank you.
You got it. All right. Yeah. Thank you. Please carry on.
Can you see my screen that I'm sharing? Okay. I'll be looking at exploring some of the issues with regards to youth and unemployment, which is what I was asked to discuss for today's session. And as we're looking at it, I think it's important that I need to unpack what we're talking about when we're talking about unemployment. There's different kinds of unemployment as we're looking at. And one is what we call the frictional one, where actually people start being unemployed at a temporary space. So for instance, you've got about 3 months where you are in a transition, moving from one employment to the other, and then you suddenly become unemployed during that space. So that becomes a frictional one. And the second category that we have is where we call it's a structural unemployment. And a structural unemployment is what most youth are falling into this category, where there's mostly a mismatch between the worker's skills and actually what the job requires, or actually where you are located. So that is where you find that there's an employment opportunity, or there's an opening for an employment, but you've got the wrong skills in terms of you fitting into this. This is where most the category of unemployment happens. And then there's another one, the third one, which falls into the seasonal one. The seasonal unemployment is usually mostly in sectors like the tourism and agriculture, where there's a season where there's hype, where the seasonal employment that is happening, especially when it is, when it's like when you are in agriculture, when you've got to go and it's that time when season where you've got to actually prune the trees and plants, and but usually that's, so it's different kind of season and different kinds of work, but it's limited to just the season. And it's actually the kind of unemployment that happens that throughout the year you are unemployed, but at least at a certain time of the year, you know that there's a certainty in terms of employment. As we look in terms of that, so what we need to look at is in terms of what does this imply to youth actually? It simply means youth unemployment is actually it refers to a share of labor force, usually between the ages of 15 to 24, that are without work, but are available to seek employment. Although in South Africa, we tend to categorize youth as being between the ages of from 15 till 35. Other countries are limiting it to just 24. So those are some of the things that we also need to look at in terms of when we're talking about youth unemployment. But also we need to be cautious of the fact that the ages of 15 to 17, when they get into the employment, there's a law that says that these are actually viewed as child labor. So again, we need to be cognizant, even though we're looking at youth, there's this category that we somehow had to take out because of it falls into what we call child labor. But there's also another category where there are these youth that are not employed, not in any education sector, or not training in any way. So these have already been discouraged in terms of searching employment. This is what we call the category that we call the NEET, NWET, which is they are not employed, not in education, or not in any training. Okay, different categories of what we're looking at. So if we start looking at these are the categories and these are the things that, what is the reality check that we need to start looking at? One of the things that we need to be aware of is unemployment rate of youth is increasing. It's not decreasing, is increasing at a higher rate, especially with South Africa now have been with the latest first quarter in 2002, we actually had about 65% of youth unemployment, which was a high rate. But that simply means that that's not only youth because they don't have the skills. It also put in that same category. There's also amongst youth that are unemployed, which are graduates. They've got a qualification and a graduate. And this was actually the last time when we checked, we had about 33% of those. This then simply means that we've got the issue and the problem of youth unemployment, but this does not come in isolation. It actually comes into a space where there is a wider unemployment problem within the society where we live in. And as we look in terms of it, we cannot forget the issue of COVID and how COVID-19 contributed and significantly increased and added onto the burden of the unemployed. And that is one of the things that we also have to be thinking of as part of our reality check. If we are to mitigate this unemployment rate or youth unemployment, we need to be cognizant that we need to come up with a solution that is sustainable. And if we're looking at sustainability, it has to actually create growth, and a growth that is going to be ongoing year after year. But also one of the reality checks that we need to consider is Africa is actually a very has a young growing population. So whatever it is that we do, we remember that where we are as Southern Africa, we are also in an area where the population growth is actually ongoing and we are very young. So there's an increase in terms of youth within that population growth. So now I've got the countries that the church is looking at. So I decided to look in terms of South Africa. So what are the stats? What are the numbers say? In South Africa, for ages between 15 to 24, we already got about 64% youth unemployment. Between the category of 25 to 34, we already got about 42%, which puts us on the highest rate. That approximately says about 3.8 million youth within the young people are not employed in South Africa. Looking at Lesotho, Lesotho has got a different space, it's got a different category, but also the numbers of Lesotho are actually the numbers that are 2019. So we don't have enough sufficient stats for 2021 and 2022 that will give us a reflection of how COVID contributed and what has happened now. So back in 2019, we had about 34%, which was the unemployment rate of youth. We go to Swaziland. Swaziland unemployment rate for person within the ages of 15 to 24 was already about 51%. But this also includes those with a long term, which were at about 26%. And then you consider what happens in Namibia. Namibia is actually a trend that has been projected that by 2022, we will be at about 49%, yet by 2023, this will go back to 47%. So these are the trends what the economists and the statisticians are actually putting up as this is what might happen in these 4 countries in the Southern Africa. So if you look in terms of the global picture, where we are the countries that I'm focusing on and where we are in terms of issues of unemployment, including the youth unemployment. If you look at the top 10 countries with highest unemployment, South Africa is there and is topping. And then we've got Eswatini, which is there and which is about 22.23%, which is number 8. We've got Lesotho, which is number 9. But when we start looking at again on global countries with the highest youth unemployment, South Africa is still topping. So what this is saying is even though South Africa is seen as a country that's got so many things that are coming in and developing, when it comes to issues of unemployment, we are leading globally, including the youth unemployment. Another concern that we need to look at, because if you look at countries like Eswatini and Lesotho, they're also looking to South Africa as there are opportunities that are there. And yet South Africa is seen as a leading unemployment rate, leading country within the unemployment rate. So if this is the scenario we're looking at, we start looking in terms of South Africa, this is what the latest stats were saying, especially if we are to look in terms of those that are actually net. So we see that there's been females that the trajectory, they have been growing from 34% to 37% for women. For men, it was about 30%, and now it has moved to, so again, the graph is still increasing in terms of people who are not employed, not educated, not in the education facility, not in any training facility. And the gap between the males and the females is getting less and less, because here it was a bit bigger, now it's getting less in terms of, so now we are getting to a space where both are almost getting into the same space. This is the latest for South Africa. If we have this picture that I've just painted, which looks as if it's not gloom and it's not a good picture, but I would like to encourage us to look at there are opportunities out there that we can explore. And as we start looking at exploring opportunity, and I think the panel will also be looking in terms of discussing and looking in terms of how can we come up with innovative solutions that are actually looking at our own societal problems. Can youth come up with this? Is this something that we could do and support as a church? And how do we facilitate those? Everybody is talking about the digital space where we are. I mean, COVID has forced people to work at home, to stay at home, to have classes via Zoom. We are in this space again of the digital space with our platform. 4IR is upon us, and some countries are already moving towards 5IR. We are still in 4IR. So there's a digital space that we're looking at. Can we tap into that? Can we create opportunities that and with young people being vibrant in this space where the technologies that they're using, can we use those as a platform that we're looking at? And then there's also the smart technology and the social innovation. So things that we're looking at, people in the agricultural sector are using technology to work smarter, or to make sure that the kind of production or the kind of work that they're doing is actually they maximize in terms of resources, but using minimal time and minimal in terms of finance. But using technology, it makes you work faster, better, and the kind of technologies we're looking at. I'm not talking about high tech. I'm looking at adding value to the spaces, but also making sure it creates a significant difference. Social innovation. How do we work smart in our communities by using resources and platforms, and just making sure that it creates an innovation that is actually creating solutions for our societies, for our communities. Can we encourage young people to do that? Can we be in those spaces? There's a sectors, we've got formal and informal sector, and most of our young people, especially as they get into skills, they get into graduation, they are waiting for somebody to employ them. Can they be the employer of future? Whether is it formal or informal, try and tap into those spaces and making sure that you are actually you are employing, you are also making sure you're having a significant difference within your community. There's opportunities in the different economies. There's a green economy where, Africa is wealth when it comes to environmental, but we are not doing enough in terms of tapping into those environmental. There's a digital economy, the gig economy that I spoke to when I talk about the digital space, but there's also the social economy. We need to have more and more young people being in the care sector, more and more young people actually enhancing opportunity to make sure that they are actually creating social solutions that are changing the environment that they're in, or making it better, the household, the communities that they're in. We've got the sustainable development goals that everybody has been talking about. What it is that we can make a significant difference there to better people's life and quality of life. There's opportunity for young people to tap in them. Again, we have got skill set. Most of the young people that we have actually have skill set, but what we need to look at, are they using those skills to be responsive into the new world of work that the new world of work has got an integration with the gig economy coming in. A whole lot of people are going into social isolation, and that affects mental wellness of people. Can we have skill set that actually helps us to respond to this? Can we have skill set that actually help us to be responsive in fixing those technologies, those digital items that we have, and be responsive? And again, the final part that I will also look in terms of opportunity is being entrepreneurial. And I know the Bishop has also highlighted the entrepreneurial aspect in terms. So for me, what I'm trying to say is, you don't have to be entrepreneurial to be an entrepreneur to be entrepreneurial. You can think within your mindset and do things differently, where you start being entrepreneurial wherever you are. So whatever problem you see, start looking to, can this be an opportunity for me to start something where we could actually make money out of it, or we could create a solution that will actually be what the community needs? And can we also be in our workspace, think of doing things differently? How do we work, make sure that we minimize, but we also make things and quality of life better? So these are different approaches that we could look at. My final slides that I think would be helpful is looking at a theme that I call a cat rule, where you say that for us within the church, within the different society, within the different communities where we are, we need to start thinking, not working alone, but working in collaboration. How do we connect with others who we have similar concern that actually to inspire the desired outcome? How do we make sure that all of us, we are looking, because the thing that is important is we all want to make sure that youth unemployment becomes reduced, not only in our smaller spaces, but in all the bigger and the wider. So it's our local communities, our regional, our wherever we are. How do we collaborate with those that are seeing the need and work together? And then the aim for CATWE is we're looking in terms of action. If there's an action, how do we make sure that we create policies or we help in enabling environment that creates policies that are mitigating to make sure that stakeholders are responsive, but they're not responsive, but they lead to actionable outcome. Sometimes we have policies and we don't act into those policies. So what we need is we need to have those policies and we make sure that there's action in there in order for us to look at outcome. The second part of action is we need to make sure that we invest in our youth. And as we invest in our youth, we invest in our youth in being towards employability. And even if it's not, and also the care, because one of some things that are coming up in numbers is because of the unemployment rate, youth are becoming despondent and their wellness and their care is actually phasing out because nobody is taking. So we need to have youth acting up in those spaces. Also, we need to make sure that we need to have interventions that are actually youth friendly. Again, I want to go into the next letter where we need to do transformation. We need to transform our households. We need to transform our communities. We need to transform our educational spaces. We need to transform our social spaces. These transformations need to make sure that we enable youth-led social solutions. Because the moment we start saying that they don't know anything, they would never participate in this. We let them participate in this platform. We'll make sure that they're actually actively involved in this. We also need to make sure that resources that are available, we capitalize on them. Networks that are available, we capitalize on them because these are only going to help us to transform this process that we want to change things to the betterment of youth. We need to have a worldview. As we're coming up with solutions, we need to have a worldview because our youth are not only going to be focusing on limited into where we are, but they need to have a global output. So we need to have skills that are future-proof. We need to make sure that we have innovative and robust pioneering output. We also need to have a global, what I call global skill set. The global skill set are just the global one, COVID-proof ones, national one, and the local one, that we make sure that you have got that mindset that says, I can be anywhere, but I can still come up with a solution regardless of where I am. And then I've spoken about opportunities. As I have spoken about, we need to make sure that we support and encourage entrepreneurial activities. Well, I wouldn't be saying, I would say much if I would get a platform in there. And entrepreneurial activities is not making money, it's looking at what is the social impact of my activity? How do I do things differently? How do I make sure that people within the community where I'm coming up with solutions for them? Make sure that we reduce vulnerabilities. When we're talking about reduce, our opportunities must make sure that youth vulnerability, people with disabilities, women, and people that are actually finding themselves that unemployed and mental health, they need to. So we need to create opportunities that are actually going to reduce those vulnerabilities. Again, another one is we need to create access. One of the things is it's not that opportunities are not there, is how do we make sure that youth can access those? So for instance, if you're looking in terms of employment, people will be saying that people must come in with 3 years of experience. How do you tap into that? 3 years of experience is too low, but doesn't mean that they don't have experience. But if they do internship, they volunteer, they have some experience. And if we create an enabling environment that says, show me what you've done, and that is enough for me to say that I will consider it. We need to start looking at that. And the other one that I want to talk about opportunity is we need to invest in youth capacity and also youth cohesion. What we need is we need to make sure we embrace the cohesion of youth and we make sure that it moves forward and it becomes a sustainability one. My final comment would be on the environment. For us, for me to talk about what we need to do in the society without talking about what we need to do in greening our communities, it's important. The issue of climate change is upon us. And if we're not doing anything with responding to those, it's also going to be upon the next generation. So for my suggestion and my comment in this is we need to start looking at greening our opportunities, our communities. And yes, there are so many opportunities in the economy where we start looking at, when you start considering the environment, decent jobs can come in. And those decent jobs are actually inclusive They're actually helping us to be resilient. They're also helping us to have our communities to recover. And that for me is the last of my comment in terms of what I was to share. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Prof. It was like one is in class, so many notes taken, so many things to think and compare. And thank you for really looking at Southern Africa and not only South Africa, because our church is broad like that. So I'm going to hand over to Prof. Tabane to lead us through this program.
Thank you very much, Prof. That was very insightful. I'm going to, without any waste of time, get into the respondents so that we can get into the debate on issues that you have raised. Could we have Lulama to respond from the Anglican Youth as our president, and then followed straight thereafter by Basitsana? We can do it back to back as respondents, and then we get into the debate.
Thank you, Prof. Tabane. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Lula Mantuta, and I am the president of the Anglican Church, the Anglican Youth of Southern Africa. And as part of the response from Prof. TD's background and very insightful presentation. I think one of the things that the church, as we explore the role of the church in this topic, I think it's key to emphasize that the church the church has a key role in encouraging, empowering, and giving counsel to the discouraged youth due to the unemployment and other social economic issues, as mentioned by the bishop in our opening. And I think it's very key that as we do that as the church, or as the church does that, it also remembers that it also has the responsibility to practically find ways to combat unemployment and enhance this discussion. And some of these ways that we've explored as the youth are identifying these entrepreneurs and business people within our pews. I think it's very important for us as a church to have this database to say who is actually sitting in the pews. It also goes back to the church being intentional in doing that. So I think it's key from what the presentation was speaking about in terms of identifying those people. It's key for us to identify these entrepreneurs and business people in our pews and have that database so that the people know, who sits in the congregation, and then we are able to map up ways of sharing resources between the entrepreneurs and the business people and the young people and the unemployed sitting in the pews at church. And from finding these ways of sharing resources, we are then able to get to a space where we do mentorship and career guidance initiatives that will arise from this information sharing. And from that, young people are mentored by fellow Christians and are guided in parts that they will explore. And one of them being what was mentioned in the last slide, where we are greening the environment and exploring careers in agriculture and tourism. So it's through mentorship and career guidance that we are really able to drive those initiatives and drive that point and really be effective in really trying to combat this whole issue of unemployment. As employment parts are identified and explored through mentorship and career guidance, workplace readiness workshops should also be explored on how we can get young people employable and what skills are essential, and so forth. And it also touches on, the age categorizing, where we are saying that 15 to 18 young people are still at school or, shouldn't be in the job market. But I think we should also be intentional in that space also in saying what can be done for this gap for this age group, what can be done to help them, to equip them, to workshop them, so that when we get to a phase of them choosing a career, them attending university and so forth, they are aligned, and the job spec and the skills that is required, that alignment has been done. So that being intentional there is also very important. So internship and doing those work readiness workshop is also important. But also, how can the church make way for internship and traineeships by employing young people? And we've got in our dioceses, in our parishes, how is the church looking really at employing young people in these diocesan centers and parish and parish staff roles? Are we really looking at empowering people? And if we are, how many young people are taking those positions, or how many young people are we sourcing out to be able to fill those positions? Because that also will speak on how really are we intentional as the church in ensuring that we are addressing the issue of unemployment, and we are starting at home by employing young people in our diocesan centers and parish and parish job opportunities. I think it's being intentional about trying to fight unemployment as a church, and we will be intentional we will see this intention by the type of notices and job boards, and conversations that go out as at the end of the service, when young people go to the job boards to see notices, what kind of notices are there? And are they really trying to tackle what we are talking about today? We'll also see that intention on how we are budgeting as the church, and what part of that budget goes to youth development. We'll also see that intention, in the church being up to date with what is happening currently in the global economic system, and how it affects the young people, and how it affects the church as a whole. So us as a church being up to date in terms of what is happening out there, and how can we really, as the church, use the pulpit, use the Bible studies, use the workshops to really try to go beyond in us being discipleshipping. Going beyond the gospel, and really being intentional and trying to tackle and combat this unemployment. I think that those are some of the points that young people would like to see, especially as we discuss the point, especially as we discuss the impact, that the church can really try to do in terms of trying to tackle unemployment. I think these are some of the things that we can try and see and have more of from our pews going down to where we are in our societies. That's all from me.
Susanna, you could follow.
Thank you, Prof. And thank you to Prof. Tshidi for an insightful presentation. Now, from ASF side, we understand that we should manage our expectations and desires in what the church can do to address youth unemployment. It's a complex issue without any quick fixes, which is evident in how our governments have failed or are failing to deal with this issue. However, we know that there are actions that can be taken to lessen the load on students, on unemployment graduates, and young people across the province. And this is where we can raise our expectations when it comes to ACSA. We need help. Now, the church has a voice and an influence in society, and this is a starting point. And the starting point for this would be for that voice to be used to advocate for the issues and challenges that we are facing, and not only when it comes up as an afterthought. Practically, what we'd like to see is partnerships that are built with training organizations to capacitate young people to become more employable. CV training workshops across the province, skills development workshops across the province for young people. Promote entrepreneurship by freeing up land that is owned by the church for crop farming, and to also assist in feeding poor families who can't afford the most basic of needs. Along with the desire to earn an income, many unemployed graduates also have the desire just to be productive. People are skilled in finance and administration and a whole lot of other fields that the church does need. So why not create opportunities for them to further develop those skills and to also assist the church? Now, Prof. Tidi touched on moving into the 4IR. And with this, the World Economic Forum indicates that some of the top skills needed for this that will be essential by the year 2025 are creativity, analytical thinking, problem solving, leadership, social influence, and flexibility, among other things. These are all skills that one could easily gain from service in ACSA or any of its organizations. Lastly, there's a need for increased support of our respective ministries and organizations of young people throughout the province. You cannot claim to be supportive of us when our resources are taken away and no efforts are made to at least supplement the absence of those resources. So you cannot claim to support us when any form of assistance we request is riddled with endless processes and red tape. So if anything, the best form of assistance and what we'd like to see come out of this is for the church to be serious about itself, being us, as we're not the future of the church, we're here now, and channel resources towards us, young people, towards ASF and ISA, because we have the will and the desire to run these above mentioned programs ourselves. Thank you.
In the debate, sorry, I was muted there. I was saying thank you very much, Basis. And I think what we should do in terms of just getting going in terms of the debate is to isolate a few action points to say what are the things that the church should do to lay the basis for solving issue that is clearly not the church issue, societal wide. And if maybe I could ask all the panelists to just give me one or two guide the church, because from the other people attending shortly in terms of actions from the church to guide the discussion from everybody else who will get. Let me start with you, Professor Tidi. Just narrow it to one or two things that are actionables, and we take it from there. Then all the rest can Bishop, if you want to come in, you can comment, and then the two respondents as well in that order.
I think Basetsana and Dulama have touched on practical things that I really like. For instance, where Basetsana mentioned about the church opening up land that could be used for agri and also developing let the youth work into that land, which was actually, and the food that they get from there, that they produce from there, actually feeds the community which is around. I think that was actually an actionable thing. But I also think that the church should also be, one of the things that Lulama mentioned was intentional, is when we start looking at letting youth come in and volunteer, especially within the age category that is not seen as, that might be seen as child labor. When we allow them to come in and volunteer, we need to be cognizant of the fact that this is actually an intentional long-term plan that we're doing with them, so that they can come in and get involved as volunteer. As they reach the age or the stage where they could go beyond volunteerism, we could start saying, you have built up the skill, you have built up an understanding of how processes are. We can give you this as a temporary job for you when you reach a certain age, and we could actually start reinvesting you in, because of the fact that they know the systems or internal way that we do things in church. It makes it easier for them to say that they can actually benefit. And the church has contributed towards skills development, learning at work, and also being ready for work readiness in terms of what they do. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. I've noted those points. Bishop, your views?
Thank you so much. And I picked up on the issue of collaboration. One thing that we keep on saying to ourselves in the church is that we cannot reinvent the wheel. So we need to collaborate with existing structures, existing organizations that are helping young people to do this and to find work and to create work. Collaboration is a key word for me. And secondly is the issue of internship and allowing young people to be given opportunity to lead, to work in the church. There's so much that needs to happen, and that is happening in the church. And I'm not talking about the Sunday church. I'm talking about Monday to Saturday church. There's lots of work in the background that needs to happen. Our parishes, our churches, our church halls are an opportunity and a facility that can be used to create employment, to assist those who need employment. I grew up in a parish church that converted one of its vestries where we rope in as an office, a career office, a center, where, you know, a young people was there, then Christopher Ovani, who helped young people in connecting and helping them with CVs and finding work and all those kind of things. That can be done, and we can do that. So my thing is that we need to look at church not as an individual, not as a structure in Cape Town or somewhere in a diocesan office, that as an individual, as a member of this church, I am the church. What is my role? What am I doing? Because if we keep on saying the church has to, then we need to unpack who exactly is that. Thank you so much, Prof.
Yeah, thank you, Bishop. Lulama, your views on actionables?
Thanks, Prof. I think one of the things that that needs to be done is how does the church allow for innovation? And I think, how do I articulate this? The church needs to really get out of its comfort zone, if I can say, you know, and really allow for innovation and innovation in ministry holistically, because in that there's also opportunities, and one of them is digitizing. There's so many things that can be done in terms of the digital space, but it needs the church to allow for innovation so that young people can come in and tap on this. And also another thing is we need to have measurable workshops where we have these workshops. For example, we come in and say we are doing a skills development workshop. It must be measurable so that also we have deadlines in terms of in 12 months, we want to see, you know, where we are with this. What is the impact that is having? You know, are we going backwards or are we going forward? Because sometimes we do things and just for the sake of doing them. And I think we need to come to a space of measuring these things and really looking deeply in terms of, are we really doing change and creating change in the lives of young people and all the unemployed. So I think those two things, innovation and really having measurable workshops in the church, I think those two for me stick up for now.
Okay, no, thank you very much. Basitsana, you have the last word on this.
Thank you, Prof. From my side, I think the actionables are skills development, innovation, and channeling resources towards that. I think Lulama and Bishop Vicentia have covered the why and the how this can be done. So, yeah.
Okay. I think that one of the things that we should add is that the church, obviously, besides the things that you have raised that they can do themselves, they have to engage government in the relevant departments. The Department of Small Business, the Department of Employment, at least in the South African context. I'm not sure what is the counterparts in the other countries that the church is also existing in. But there's a need to hold those departments accountable in terms of their targets that they have set for creating opportunities for small business, but also creating opportunities for general employment in terms of where government is supposed to be, in a sense, creating jobs. But also government has to engage business. There are a lot of people, there are a lot of business people who are parishioners or members of or congregants of our church. What are we doing to mobilize those people to create jobs for particularly business people who are rooted in the church? What are they doing to create jobs in the churches or in the congregations where they exist? Because charity has to begin at home. If they belong to the church, surely we're expecting that they should try and live poverty in those churches. I hope we can list of deliverables. Is there anything else that people would like to add before I go to the audience that we may have forgotten or that may have fell in the cracks in all of the comments so far?
I would just want to add on the comments that have been made. And I think what's key is we need to understand that the church is part of an ecosystem where there's community, there's also all the other parties and other players that are coming in. And whether directly or indirectly people are involved, they are part of this ecosystem. And what we need to do as a church is to be strategic in how do we want to make sure that we benefit, but also we are players in this ecosystem in order to make sure that we participate for the benefit of our own communities. In that space, what I'm looking at, policies are always being some of the things that we have a policy within the church, there's a policy within governance and government where we are, but we need to make sure that these policies must speak to the needs that we want to achieve at the end, and also be active players in those policy-making processes, whereby it's not only us individually, but also the bigger space benefits the community. So I thought that's the last word for me. Thank you.
Yes. Sorry, I got cut off there. Are you still on the floor?
I'm done. Thank you.
All right. Wonderful, Bishop. I'm trying to check whether on the chat box, and I'm not sure whether any of you are able to see that, whether there were any comments. Let me see.
Yeah, there are comments that are coming, and I think Sibusiso is really raising important points on working with TVET colleges and other colleges, and I think skilling our young people in that. And I think there was an issue on disability too. How do we deal with young people who are disabled? Because
yes,
we cannot think of able people, all of us.
Yes. I think that's a good comment that we need to take into account in terms of categories of solving the unemployment crisis. Mweketi raised an issue about theology of the work. Bishop Ramstein must lead us on that one. He says he hopes that the issue of theology of work will be touched on during this webinar.
Yeah, I was interested to hear from Mweketi what is he talking about. This is throwing a term out there. And I think as an Anglican, I'll go to what drives us, which is the Benedictine spirituality, which talks about study, work, and prayer. So there's a theology of work in there, and work not for an individual, but for a community. And I think this will help to curb a problem of us advancing a prosperity theology or ideology when we are not equipping our people to find work. And I think that's something that I'm mindful of in so many spaces. When we ask for money, which we need to do God's ministry, where do we think those people get it from? What is the role of the church in creating employment and assisting people to have livelihood? And what do we say about jobs that don't give people a wage that is a living wage? So we cannot be spectators in these issues. We cannot blame other people. We have a role to play, and it needs to be clear and clearly articulated in theology of work. So what kind of work are we dealing with in this age? Professor Mohapelwa in her presentation raised the issue of all kinds of work. and who gets to be able to get that work, who's skilled for that work. So, you know, theology of work, if we take Lord Jesus Christ, he was a carpenter and still traveled and taught and saved lives. So I think that's an example there.
Yes. All right. In terms of just shaping the work going forward, because I don't see any other comments. If you do, please do alert me. I'm trying to just go through quickly to see. There's another comment, Mwekezi Mapela. Simple things can be done. The church has a lot of members who are influential, people who can help the youth. There should be days set aside when they can give out some information and so on. I think the point there is made that that I was making also, that there are business people in the church who I'm sure are creating jobs elsewhere, far away from the church, and maybe we should try to see how we can mobilize those. Any comments on that? Comment posted there by Mwekezi from a panel.
Now, and I think for me is not saying, you know, not want to repeating what says is how do we action those important things that are coming up. And I don't know if it's answering this, looking at Wayne's comment on, you know, the church leveraging on the government's policies like employment tax incentives. And I think that it'd be people who are in this space will help us, because though we say we are we're a PBO, public beneficiary organization, that we're not taxed, but we are taxed. How do we come into that and help? And I'm sure this is where Prof can really help us, that as a PBO, how do we tap in those initiatives?
Yes. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think that we need to have in a sense, a strategy that says what are the resources that are already within the church that can raise the levels of employment within the church before we even think of big things that the church is going to do outside and so on. So I think it's an issue that we need to look at. I think if we, for example, we just said to the Archbishop, just convene a summit of all Anglican business people. Just convene that summit in each diocese. You will be surprised what could come out of there. Because we need to be able to say, if the church, especially our church that has over 4 million members, and this is an old number, maybe bigger, you know, how many are unemployed in that 4 million? Is there a survey that even tells us that to start with, so that we know what kind of problems we're dealing with? I'm not saying the church must be internally focused, but I think the church must begin somewhere in order to set an example for everybody else in society. So I think the point that we must really make a big note of in our report to the church for action, or stuff that we can do ourselves before we go and shout at government to do something.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. And to come in there, Prof. Tabane, I think one of the tools that are really important for us in the church movement, especially in the Christian structure, is ecumenism, ecumenical partners. For us to solve the issue of unemployment, the Anglicans cannot go it alone. We have other partners in the ecumenical movement that we can join with, which then this moves and takes away the attention from the Archbishop must do this. It is what do we do in our local communities as ecumenical partners to deal and address these things. Keyword again, collaboration. If a Methodist, you know, have a connection that Lutheran can tap into and Anglicans can be part of, then let's do that. My problem is that we cannot set ourselves up, and we will fail if we do that when we think that the Anglicans has all the answers in doing this. Let's get into ecumenical partners and work together.
Absolutely. Reginald,
Can I come in there?
What want to comment? Go on.
Yes, I really like what the bishop is saying, because I actually was going to say sometimes you will find that there'll be friends of the Anglican Church that will be willing to support and willing to partner with you. So when we're tapping into resources, they can be internal, they can be external. Those are actually adding value. And sometimes the cause itself is good enough for people to collaborate with you. If the cause is the one thing that is frustrating all of, or is giving pain to everyone, it's easy to bring everybody on board to support you in this process. So as you pursue the cause, make sure that you open the cause, and everybody that feels the pain within the cause will jointly join you without any hesitation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. There's a question on the chat whether the theology of work could be linked to entrepreneurship. Is it can the church begin with this concept?
I think that then if in church lingo, entrepreneurship is called theology of work, then let's do it. Let's create new words in the church lexicon. I'm happy to do that, and I think we should think of entrepreneurship as the church. And as I've said in Lesotho, we can create our own work, and we cannot talk about being a poor church. As Masoka has brought up in the chat, the land that we have that we can use for agriculture. But the simple things is we have so much that we use in the church, and who gets the money? Talking of Anglicans, the wine that we use for the communion, where do we buy it? Who makes it? The churches that we use in Southern Africa, do that. Uniform, where do we get the cloth? Who's sewing? Who's doing all those kind of things? The candles, those are the things. We use so much of items and furniture items made out of wood. Who do we use in the church? Where are they? And so there's so much that we have that we can use, and we really need to start looking within and really transforming the lives of our people.
No, absolutely. Mwegezi Mapela posed to say that we are willing to help the church, or in fact, we are willing to help out the youth. We just need a platform within the church. I think this is what we were saying earlier, to say there's a need to create various platforms within the church for people in the church who are willing to assist. So I think it's a very big, really big takeaway from this discussion. Someone in Lesotho posts, I think Masoka posts that she thinks that agriculture can help the youth unemployment in Lesotho. I'm saying this because we have lots of fields which are currently not used throughout our parishes. We can negotiate with the owners of the fields and partner with them. That's a practical suggestion there, Bishop Vicentia, from your diocese over there. Any comments from the panel on these comments?
I will say amen. Let it be so. Let's do it. And we have to start with work. And I'm thinking that it doesn't start on the top. It starts at the bottom. It starts with a parish that goes into an archdeaconry, that then feeds into the diocese, and the diocese feeds into the province. And this is how it works. Because then if the province has to tell dioceses to do, it's not one size fits all. It's a different kind of ball game. So, in Soweto, what do we do? In Tata, what do we do? In Windhoek, what do we do? Leribe, what do we do? Because the needs are different in every context, but we know that we need to solve the problem. So that what will I will encourage, that the church in this instance cannot tell the people, do this. Let's walk along and say, your context better. Let's find solutions.
Yeah, can I also add that also, in us creating these spaces and young people voicing out and wanting these spaces to be created. I think also it's important as young people to know that we have a role and we need to hold the church to account. And we cannot run away from that and say it's the Archbishop's responsibility or it's the Bishop's responsibility. This is our church, this is our country, our countries, and we have the responsibility in making sure that this discussion and some of these things that we are trying to implement, we are the same people that hold the church to account to say, we had a webinar and this is what has been discussed. How far are we with that? And how can we as young people, help and engage the church in trying to further some of these action points? I think I'm just trying to highlight that young people shouldn't isolate themselves from these discussions. These discussions are our discussions. And these things are there and are created to help us. So we need to hold the church to account.
No, absolutely. There's an issue also about, the role of youth organizations in steering this whole approach for youth to youth unemployment. In a sense, the youth organizations that are represented here today are equivalent of the NYDA within the church. Mm-hmm. And the issue is, instead of something being done for them per se, they should be the leader. And we need to also be able to, in this report that we're going to give the church, be able to identify what will be the specific youth role. And youth should be continuously engaged in solving this.
Yeah,
and I think it's important. My biggest takeaway from today is just building from the ground up, targeting those business people within our parishes, in our archdeaconries, having those forums, and tapping into those agricultural spaces in small spaces. We don't need huge amounts of resources or land, but the little that we have can make a huge difference in our communities.
Yes.
Can I say in closing, for me, my final comment, the unemployment of youth is a pipeline that is actually moving between 15 to 35, and it keeps fluctuating. There are things we can do that are actually low-hanging fruit. For instance, I know, for instance, in Lesotho, there are schools that are actually falling under the Anglican. Start teaching or start encouraging children in the schools to be entrepreneurial in the way that they do things, and start small innovation that are actually they're looking at. We start looking at a bigger space because there's the youth-led society or community within the diocese where we could actually initiate program or opportunities that are actual. But what is also important is these small isolated activities or initiatives that are done by the church needs to recognize them and elevate them and support, because this is where they start seeing that actually whatever innovation that I'm coming in, it's recognized by the church. Start moving into this whole pipeline. By the time we get into the 35, they start seeing the value of being active in church and also seeing how the church actually values them. And it becomes an natural things to get there, but they also start being much more actively involved in initiating things that are actually solving. So I'm just saying, let's look at low-hanging fruit, but also look in terms of exploring what we have and also making sure we expand this. And that's my final word, I think.
Yeah. All right. Just to invite, there's over 101 people who are on the call. And thank you very much for that participation. We had about 300 people who had registered to participate. But obviously with these things, people can always fall off. So we're left with about 15 minutes on the webinar, and I would like to invite more comments from people who are logged in. Just to give background to those who may have joined late, the commission set up by the Archbishop is meant to tackle the issue of youth unemployment and advise the church on what actions to take. So the reason we are on this webinar is we're starting that process. You could almost say this is a public hearing by the commission to get to get comments from people who are otherwise not in the commission, so that we can go and distill these and create a report that must be given to the church within the next month, I believe. I think we would appreciate more comments from you who are logged in. But of course, even post the webinar, we will create a mechanism where you can continue to send us some comments until possibly middle of next month. So just to take out that invitation for you to comment some more. I see that Maweja Solomon commenting, saying that the role of the church and in economic development is to educate the people in the church. So the church is rich with professionals who can provide mentorship to young adults. Very important. Question of mentorship, very, very key, because sometimes people just need that nudge, that encouragement from other people who have done it before. Comments from anyone on the panel?
I think it's important, because I think I saw Muruti Jacques Pretorius again talking about when we do this, we need to interrogate why people are unemployed. It's important. We cannot overlook that. And when we create these employment opportunities or create job opportunities, we should not do as it has been done. It has to be different. And since he's on this, big boss in this, with the schools of Southern Africa, I can change in Southern Africa. I think the issue of the curricula and how we teach our young people should be introduced. And yes, issues of skill development, of mentoring, it is central to this, equipping our saints for the road ahead. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think the issue of mentorship can be a big project that the church should do. I'm not sure whether it happens anywhere. I don't want to assume that it doesn't happen. But there are lots of people in the church who could be paired with young people from ASF, from the youth structure, as part of ensuring that they are, the opportunities are open to those young people, which otherwise could not be open if they knew nobody from within the church who have traveled the same path. So I think this could be a low-hanging fruit. It may not produce employment immediately, but it will certainly plant the seed for future opportunities. Any other comments? We've got a lot of people on the call, but who are shy. I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, I think what I'm seeing, it's of important. And yes, Busiso, we'll look at what you're suggesting in terms of the framework that could be drawn. And Wayne, yes, mentorship is important. He says the social networks within parishes adds to young people. So I think we'll use this terminology or this thematic thing of saying no one is left out, no one is left behind, that we all go along. And I think when we do that, we won't leave the young people behind or leave them out.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Any other comments from the audience or from the panel? You're free to contribute now as we round off the webinar.
I see young people are not talking. You see now, Lulama and Masinza. Yeah, my thing is, as Prophet says, the last word. Truly, this is the last word. Okay, I will close in something else. But the last word is, as we do this, this is not the end of it, and this is not the beginning. It's a continuation. So those on call in parishes and organizations, let us start now. Let's get the work going and done. The report will be given, but I don't want the report to be the end of this work. This work will end when we say we no longer have young people unemployed. It is possible. We need to dream big. It is possible.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much. Sibusiso posts that believes that these discussions, we could create a framework for the church to deal with the issue of unemployment. I think it links to what you are saying, that Bishop, that it shouldn't be the end, but the beginning. So we create a platform that says, for example, why can't each diocese have a similar team as part of taking this forward, to say there must be a focal point in every diocese in terms of dealing with this issue of economic development continuously. Because a central team to deal with, I don't know how many dioceses there are, exposed that have been absent from church structures for a while. But there are many dioceses. I'm sure there are over 20.
Minus, Lusophone speaking, so we need to count now without them. How many of us are we?
All right. All I was saying is, imagine if we had a team of 3 or 4 people in each diocese, then we're creating a big movement that can touch base from time to time to say, what are you doing then? We could even share at some point, maybe after 3 to 6 months, share experiences, exchange notes about how other dioceses are handling this. Bishop, there's a question of where people can send their proposals. Can you guide on that?
I think we will send out an email in both ISA, AXA, and ASF platforms and all those kind of things, so that we share the proposal. Because I think it needs to be specifically on this. It shouldn't be, mixed up with other business.
All right. So possibly have to create an email address that people can send their proposals to.
Yes.
Depending on when the commission will meet again, we could give that maybe 2 weeks for people to send proposals following this webinar, because others may sort of, get ideas from here and be able to give us a one-pager saying, add this to the framework.
Yeah, I wouldn't want us to say 2 weeks. That's a long time. Sometime next week we'll send it out, because we might have people watching this on YouTube a couple of days, so more will come. So we'll share this as soon as possible.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to give each panelist to give me a parting shot. We've got 8 minutes left, so I'm going to ask, starting with you, Prof, your parting shot and in conclusion of this webinar.
A mindset that is positive, that says that any problem, there's always an opportunity for solution, is good enough for us to start and work forward. So I'm saying to everybody's hearing, if we could develop that mindset, we can solve this problem. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Can I just chip in? My battery's about to die. So just from my side, I think what we set out to achieve today, we've done. And now that proposals are coming, I think we have both something to work on. And yeah. Oh.
No, wonderful. Thank you very much, Bastam.
Yeah.
So who's on the floor?
I am. Sorry.
Now, so you say that's Lulu, so I'm glad you say I am.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I think lastly, what I would like to just say is, this discussion, this webinar is part of, the hope that the church is trying to remind us as a society, and in that there's hope, and it's in these discussion and these things that we're trying to implement that we'll be able to really, raise that hope, and people are able to believe in terms of what the church is about and what the church is trying to do. So, as Professor Tidi said, not all is lost, and there's so much that can be done, and it's in these discussions and in these webinars that we are able to do that. So I'm grateful for this platform. I'm grateful for this webinar, and there is hope.
No, wonderful, wonderful. Anyone else who would like to cite a last word before I ask the bishop to close for us? Okay, over to you, Bishop.
Thank you. And I think for me, two things. One, it's a scriptural reference that I came that they may have life and have it in abundance. And this is what we are living into and leaning into, that all of us can tap into that life in abundance. And secondly, that we have the solutions to our problems. We have the answers to what is challenging us. The healing is in the waters. We can do this. And I think this is where we are looking into as people of faith, as believers, that we have been given the capacity to really change our lives and transform our communities. And so I'm asking and I am pleading. Prof. JJ is lost.
I'm back now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to everybody for this wonderful, wonderful webinar. I think we achieved the objectives. I'm not sure whether it should be the last one. Maybe we should do one more when we have a framework which we can circulate and then present to people who may have missed this particular session. But maybe that should be closer to when we are ready to give our report to the church. But thank you so much, Bishop. Thank you all to all the panelists, Professor Tshidi, for an excellent presentation at the beginning, youth leaders for your response, and all the participants who sent comments, and everyone else who has been a part of this. We'll leave it
And
there.
thank
We
you for
adjourn.
those of you who joined online. Thank you for your time and your engaging us through the chats. Really well.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Let's adjourn the meeting.